This is how one player ruined the demon list. I have no idea what this video is about. Never reacted to a Tria video. Subscribe.
There's been a lot of talk recently about how the modern demon list has been ruined. Whether it's due to the devolution of gameplay, legendary levels falling to the legacy list, or controversial guideline changes, it seems that nearly everyone is unhappy for different reasons.
This is an interesting video for Tej, but let's run it. Wait, why?
While the community is unable to pinpoint one specific characteristic that differentiates the current list from the one a few years ago, the root of Pointer Crate's downfall can easily
Is this going to be another controversial video that makes me upset?
be traced back to the actions of one notorious player. One of the most glaring issues the community has with modern list demons is the prioritization of difficulty over playability. Not every list demon does this, but every single offender sticks out like a sore thumb.
Fun fact about Tria, you can't tell when he's sarcastic and when he's serious. Wait, people have said the same thing about me.
A clear indicator of a level being buffed to an unnecessary degree is the use of fixed hitboxes. The hitboxes of spikes and saw blades are almost always smaller than their respective objects. RobTop designed these objects this way to grant players with a larger margin of error than they believe is present. This dead space in these objects gives difficult levels a more sinister appearance by making the gaps look tighter than they actually are. More importantly, however, it prevents the game from getting too difficult. A smaller spike or an invisible saw blade can easily bypass the safety
What is this called again? Like when people add hitboxes into a spike, it's accurate hitboxes, right?
measure by fixing the hitbox to the height, length, or diameter of a desired object. Creating a level with purposely fixed hitboxes was heavily frowned upon
fixed
just a few
hitbox.
short years ago.
I see.
Levels
Thank you.
such as Tartarus and Crimson Planet use fixed hitboxes to try to push the skill ceiling to new heights. Although they both succeeded in doing so, they were each met with a fair amount of backlash. The overwhelmingly negative response to fixed hitboxes sent a crystal clear message to both creators and verifiers. However, not everyone got the memo. Avernus was not the first level to introduce anything, really. It's about as original as any other.
When was I always mix up Eternus and Avernus? When was Avernus a top one? Was it the top one before Tartarus, I think?
Hell-themed remake of a former top demon. What Avernus did do, however, was make the community realize that a new era of Geometry Dash had been entered. The era of the top player playground. Throughout the last 3 years, we've seen countless examples of top demon verifications getting buffed to click patterns, being riddled with.
It was top one before Tidal Wave. Avernus was top one after Acheron. Okay. Oh, did it go Tartarus, Acheron, then Avernus, then Tidal Wave?
Fixed hitboxes, and even featuring extremely high CPS waves, all because it's funny. What this funny really does is artificially inflate the difficulty of the demon list to benefit the few players who are talented enough to keep up. The top 0.001%.
I will agree, like, I think so far this is pretty well formulated, and I think it's a bit of the pressure that I feel as a player and why I'm kind of jumping a lot. Like, a lot of the game in its current state really is built around, like, favoring, I mean, I guess he already said this, favoring difficulty over the playability for sure. I certainly feel that sentiment. Like the fact that I'm a player who's only been playing the game for 6 months and I feel the pressure to like want to be way better at the game than I currently am probably is also anecdotal evidence, no?
Players are all in agreement that this artificial ascent of the skill ceiling is good for the game.
That's a good pun.
But that completely ignores the rest of the.
Yeah, people make levels for the demon list. You know, I feel like that's probably a big reason that motivates a lot. I mean, we even saw that with like months ago when we reacted to Mindcap's Heliopolis video. You know, he's one of those creators who's very fixated on making a top one. I have to think that a lot of level creators are probably extrinsically motivated by like the kind of the popularity factor of being able to create a top one and have it stay a top one, right?
The community who will only suffer because of this. Another way this top player has ruined the demon list is through a consistent lack of honesty. Players have lied about their attempt counts for as long as the game has been around. However,
and this is why attempts don't matter. I'll say it again. I'll bark it from my freaking soapbox for the 1000th time. Since it's also easy to cheat attempt counts and it's hard to track because also people like they'll practice on start positions, they'll practice on different start positions, they'll also use like the freaking mods or whatever to modify it. It's like so why outside of it being a personal metric for you to track your own progress, why do we as the GD player community care so much about attempts? I want to challenge everybody on that. Why? I don't think we should.
However, certain top players did their best to crack down on this and set a good example for the community. That era has unfortunately long passed, and today's top players all have an extensive history of lying. Geometry Dash's single-player nature is what allows players of all skill levels to get away with this. There's no competing directly against someone else, and there's no public database showing how much time someone has truly spent on a level. Attempt lying is as easy as playing on a separate copy or saying you forgot about 30k attempts from 2 months ago. I'd be willing to bet that at least 60% of the top 100 players on the stats viewer have lied about an attempt count within the last 3 months. Lying about doing a deep run to 100 is as easy as saying a number that people typically play from on that level. If someone asks for proof, just say that Shadowplay messed up and you don't have a recording. Lying about a level's difficulty is the easiest of them all, but also the most damaging. We've seen top levels get robbed of the #1 spot on the list because of an overwhelming ego. We've also
Which level was that? That looked
seen
cool.
verifiers consistently underrate their verifications by dozens of spots. The thing about attempt lying is that it's very easy to get away with if you do it consistently. Lying about difficulty is entirely different
That
because
looks
people
sick.
tend to catch on after a while. As a level gets more and more victors, the sample size eventually becomes large enough to offset that one outlier opinion.
Yeah, that
Over
was sick.
time, a level will move to its correct spot on the list.
It's supposed to be top one?
Undo
Damn.
the negative effects it has on other levels and other players. I've personally been a victim of playing a newly placed list demon that ended up being 31 spots underrated. Spending weeks on a level that you should be able to get through comfortably is a genuinely terrible feeling.
But would they underrate? I feel like the tendency for a player who verified a level, their tendency would be to overrate it, not underrate it, right? Like, why would they underrate
Can't
it?
even imagine how the players who got an unbelievable achievement
Are they trying to psyop like other people? Like, are they trying to make them play a level? Like, are they trying to burn out other players by making them play like a level that's inaccurately easier or like harder than it's rated?
stripped from them feel.
Oh, yeah. I think it's unintentional. I think it's because they're so good that they can't accurately rate it. I think it's just
In a
unintentional.
community that is entirely built upon trust, it seems that the most influential players are often the least honest. In a way, you could argue that this top player used his status to fully take advantage of the demon list. We've actually seen multiple top players bend the rules of point and create in extremely creative ways. For example, top players have beaten listings
Oh, to
on
get more to
unofficial
play? That's interesting.
LDMs that slightly nerfed the level, only for the record to still stand. It's not outlandish to assume that a less influential player would have been told to rebeat it. Can you imagine if Little Jimmy with 100 subscribers
Popoff had some insane list opinions because he was just too good to rate accurately. I do think there probably are some players that are just like, yeah, they're just burdened by like being so good at the game that they can't see the game like a common man. They can't see it like you and me.
beat Eternal moment on the LDM that allows you to take a skip, there's a non-zero chance that his point and crit account would have been temporarily banned on the spot. Even though Geometry Dash is a single-player game,
Yeah, I guess he's like
the
doing
top
that
player
too.
getting away with breaking the rules on multiple occasions has significant effects on the other players as well. In this case, exposing vulnerabilities in point and crit's guidelines has led other players to push the limits of what's really allowed. We saw this happen the most in 2023 and 2024 when the list grinding community felt the effects of multiple events that permanently changed the trajectory of our community. One of the more influential events from this time period was the release of Update 2.2. RobTop changed the physics of nearly every game mode in this update, which instantly broke dozens of list demons. Prior to December 19th, 2023, playing on a private server wasn't an issue that point and crit was concerned about. The most controversial type of completion from 2.1 was beating a level
You and me is a bit far-fetched, by the way. What are you talking
on
about?
an external LDM or star position copy. However, once
I know what
the
you're talking
update
about.
was released and
What?
many levels were impossible, the list team also had to juggle completions on bug fixes, the 2.1 GDPS, normal 2.2 completion,
But I feel like at the end of the day, any difficulty rating is like subjective opinion, right? So like, how can, oh man, dude, this whole demon list thing is such a can of worms. Like, everybody's opinion is subjective. So like, why is it the only way we can rate it is just like if more people have the same subjective opinion, then we're saying that their subjective opinion is right? That don't make sense to me.
completions, 2.2 verifications, and eventually the controversial click
I think it's a little crazy to kind of paint the person whose subjective opinion was weighed inaccurate as them lying. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's just like, it's hard to come up with difficulty ratings and it's on a per person basis.
between frames mod. The events that
It's better than no list at all. We've talked about this before, sure.
Took place in 2023.
Yeah, the list is never going to be perfect.
2024 ended up completing a circuit of power trips between top players that started way back in 2022. The TLDR of these rule bends is that players have been beating top levels on nerfed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the metric of difficulty is also hard, but I feel like someone could potentially build a tool that like kind of looked at least at the layout of a level. And maybe it just like analyze, like, for example, I've seen like a lot of these videos of like frame perfect counters and stuff that could probably factor in. I feel like there's a way to create a tool that at least like at a fundamental basis of how the level is built and designed could give you like a closer analysis or an analytical metric of like the level's difficulty. But I don't know step one to building that tool. But I feel like there's something there. Something that isn't human, because humans are never going to agree.
Players have beaten top levels and controversially won JD tournaments by playing on private servers. And players have added CBF blockers to their top demon verifications both prior to...
No, I'm saying, I know that there are a lot of different pieces to levels and stuff. I know, guys. I'm saying as a baseline. You're not listening. I'm saying as a baseline.
And after their level was verified. In every single one of these cases, Corner Crate had...
I saw some guy did a mathematical formula for that. Yeah, like that sounds like a thing.
Make a ruling that directly benefited one of the players involved and directly or indirectly hurt the other player involved. In May of 2026, it's impossible to come to a conclusion on who wins this morality battle because there are so many cases of the rules being bent. What we can agree on is that this constant rule permutation favoring certain players is the direct result of one player proving that the list team can easily be deceived for multiple years. Looking at a more indirect threat to the list, another fault of this top player is normalizing jumping. Jumping in Geometry Dash refers to committing to a level that is multiple echelons of difficulty harder than your current hardest level. We've seen quite a few anomalies jump over many tiers of difficulty and go on to be top players. Where this specific scenario differs is that it was the #1 player who successfully completed a jump. Any community is going to replicate what the #1 player or team is doing. That's just simply how metas form. You look at who's on top and assume that what they are doing is the most effective tactic available. In order to fully understand how this...
I mean, that's fair. I think I'll disagree a bit, but like, I think that's just from the perspective of like, I'm sure in other ways I'm not, but like, I give people quite a bit of benefit of the doubt in terms of like forming their own opinions and actions. I don't know, like, for example, for me, like, I wouldn't purely form my path. Like, I wouldn't model my own progression in the game off of Zoink. I do think that there are people who probably do that, but I don't think that's by and large what every single person picks. I could see how someone draws that conclusion, and probably to an extent it is accurate, but I don't know. I don't know where the actual delineation between like players who look to the person on top as like a blueprint for how to become better at the game versus players who see like the top player in the game. They're just like, oh, that guy is like so different than me. I should do my own thing because like he's an anomaly. That doesn't make sense, you know? No, exactly. And I certainly veer on the side of like everyone's different, so don't compare yourself to others. Like that's where I land. That's why like I feel like that's a bit of a misattribution there. I could certainly see how a lot of players could come to that conclusion, but I'm not sure if I'm sold on the actual data of that, of like most players look to the top one play. Like maybe quite a few do. Like a substantial few. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to explain the entire issue surrounding jumping. The main issue with jumping for the general community is that it often doesn't work. Committing tens or even hundreds of thousands of attempts into a level that is far beyond your skill range can go terribly wrong if you don't have the genetics for it. The top players who have jumped were only successful because they were able to instantly acclimate to levels of a similar difficulty to their new hardest demon. What a lot of people don't understand is that this is the exception, not the rule. There are countless examples of people who have jumped to a level and then continued to struggle on easier levels. A huge part of this is genetics, which we can also call talent, but another part of this is skill set. If your hardest demon is Windy Landscape and you jump to every end, you're still going to have the ship and wave skills of someone who has never beaten an extreme demon. Where this ties into the demon list is that jumping heavily skews your perception of difficulty. For a lot of people, it permanently disables their difficulty gauge. When they move on to other levels of similar difficulty, one of two scenarios typically takes place. The first is that they find the other levels significantly easier than the one they jump to. When people jump to a level, they're going to remember how hard it felt for them throughout their entire journey. This includes the large period of time when they couldn't do more than a 10% run on said level. If they then go on to play another level of the same skill set and same difficulty, they're probably not going to struggle nearly as much as they did with the level they jumped to.
That's genuinely fair. This is actually an argument I have not heard before. That actually makes a ton of sense, that players who jump their gauge on difficulty would be vastly different. That's actually a very good point. Now, I'm not going to fully agree with what he said about like people who have success in jumping are just more genetically inclined. That sounds crazy. That's a crazy point. I think that at the end of the day, I've said this before, you should do what you want in the game. If jumping appeals to you and you think that you'd have fun doing it, do it. But don't force yourself into a jump that you don't want to do. I don't know. I feel like the GD community can really overcomplicate this sometimes. Like there are a lot of people who are just like, no, never jump. You're ruining your fun. Or like, oh, you should always jump because you should always be testing your, like, I don't think there's a one size fits all solution, man. I think it's the same thing as life. If something in this game calls out to you and it seems interesting, you should do that. If the idea of doing it feels like taking a bath in rusty nails and like bugs, then don't do it. It's really that simple. We can add all this extra kind of like knowledge and all these bullet points and stuff to it, but it's literally the same as any game you ever play, regardless of the skill ceiling. Follow the fun. Do what you want to do.
If a list mod asks about their difficulty opinions, they're probably going to say that the level they jumped to is underrated. Zodiac, Unknown, Firework, and Wazaretta are a few examples of levels that were overrated on the demon list, at least partially due to their jumpers. All of those levels have been jumped to countless times, and the jumpers didn't have an accurate difficulty placement. The second scenario is that someone...
Also, you can just go back to easier levels if you want to learn a new skill set instead of torturing yourself with a level that uses that skill set in brutal ways. Exactly. That's a good point. I'm really glad you brought that up because he was saying like when you jump, you can have, and this is the common argument a lot of people have. They're like, you're probably gonna be ship carried from Bloodbath, Teej, but you're not gonna have like all the other and it's like, dude, that's fine. It's fine. You're thinking about problems that don't exist yet. If I'm truly out of my element on a future level I jump to, I can always pair back and do an easier level of that game mode. I don't know why people view this as such like a, once you commit to this, your whole GD career and life is ruined afterwards. Like, I just don't see reality as that black and white. Like, it's like, cross that bridge when you come to it. If you're having difficulty with something or like in the future, I have a jump that I'm not enjoying, I can always go back and do an easier level. I don't think that part of it is that deep.
Someone jumps to a level that contains a very specific skill set. If someone...
And I think Bloodbath can help on more game modes than just ship. I think people vastly overstate how ship carried Bloodbath is. It certainly has a lot of ship, but I would be remiss to say that as someone who jumped from 9 circles, I've improved on a lot of other game modes just from Bloodbath.
Follows the...
All of them? No. But quite a few.
Path and jumps to Wazaretta.
Yeah, Ball, UFO, come on. And Ball and UFO, those are fundamental game modes that are going to be in every, or like not every, but a lot of high skilled difficulty levels in this game.
Click sync levels are going to feel impossible unless they have top player genetics. The player will not only have an inaccurate...
Stop saying top player genetics, bro. It's genuinely, this is honestly my biggest pet peeve with gamers. I get it, man. I've talked about it before. I get that some people are like LeBron James to basketball as Zoink to Geometry Dash. Yes, I don't, but I think it's drastically overstated. I think a lot of people use this argument way too much to talk themselves out of like actually pushing their true limit and seeing what their benchmark in a game can truly be. Like, it's way too easy. It's way too easy to do that. So I'm sorry. I'm always going to push back when people are just like, because here's the harm, right? We can talk about this and we can all know what we're talking about, but like a kid hears that and they're just like, oh, Zoink has natural genetics, therefore I'm never going to try to beat Deadlocked. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's harmful information because the possibility of someone being misinformed based off that information is much greater than like the actual, I think, power of the consideration of like, hey, just so you know, some people are just naturally going to be better than the game at you, than you. That's fine, man. But when we talk about the skill ceiling, like, you can still become a great player in this game. Are you going to become a top 1 player? Maybe not. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. And I think a lot of people hear this whole thing about like, oh, maybe I'm not genetically predisposed for this. Therefore, if something takes me more attempts than the next guy, I probably should stop or give up. That's bad.
Accurate difficulty opinion on Wazaretta, but also on the levels around it. Difficulty opinions are, and always will be, subjective. There is no right or wrong on the demon list because everyone has different genetics and different experiences.
Yeah, and Zoink has a lot of game time. I've talked about this many times. I think people just, I don't know, dude. People like to build narratives Especially people who are like, I'm sorry, I'm going to call some people out. Some people like to cope. Some people like to cope. They see this, they see someone who's succeeding, like Zoink, and they build the narrative in their head of just like, okay, Zoink's just there because he's special. Zoink's not there because he grinded for a long time. Zoink's not there because he overcame his own obstacles of self-doubt within his own head. He's there because he's special, and God smiled upon him when he was born and was like, you're going to be the best Geometry Dash player. And I just think that when people build that script, man, it's bullshit. I don't think that's the case. Maybe it's one small aspect to it. But I need people to believe in themselves more, man. Because you just never know. You live life long enough and if you count yourself out, then yes, you always know. And congrats, you can pat yourself on the back, give yourself a gold star of like, I never achieved what I wanted in life because I always counted myself out and settled for less than I was worth. Good job. Who wants to be that guy?
Experiences. However, if jumpers start to overpower the normal progressors, these anomaly difficulty opinions will eventually become the norm. Top players are good enough to beat high-end extreme demons as one of their first demons, but it doesn't set a good example for the rest of the community.
I believe everyone can become top 1 someday if they just don't quit and grind enough. Now, I don't want to be... Don't get me wrong. I don't want to delude people into thinking that, like... I don't want people to take away what I'm saying as, like, Teej is right. I can be even better than Zoink. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is the danger in, like, comparison. Because comparison convinces us that if we can't be better than Zoink, then there's no point in trying to challenge ourselves. Does that make sense? The goal isn't to become the next Zoink. The goal is to not find excuses. The goal is to avoid excuses that would self-sabotage yourself from reaching your full potential. Are we following?
Another way this player...
Yeah, exactly. I'll never be LeBron, so I'm gonna stop playing basketball. Exactly. It's that. Like, what? Bro, you're probably never even gonna be in contention to enter the NBA. Is that a reason to not play basketball? Especially if you like it?
Impact of the...
Yes, the goal is to become as best as you can be. But that's why I really don't like the genetics conversation. Because I think... Here's what I will say. Do I think that every single player could potentially reach top 1 if they just worked hard enough and didn't burn out? I find that unlikely. But you know what I do find very likely? I will say this isn't backed by any data, but I've just lived life long enough that anecdotally I feel like this makes sense, and I feel like I can corroborate this. I would say that most players in any game, but we'll use Geometry Dash as the example, they talk themselves out of reaching their full potential in the game, whatever that full potential is. But every player, whether you're genetically predisposed to be a better player or not, everyone eventually reaches the point in playing a game where it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? When you're an intermediate and it's a lot harder to get better, you reach this point of friction where it's like you have to really work and grind to reach the next echelon of skill. Now, I would argue and I would posit that most players, they probably give up on reaching their full potential either before or in the middle of this point. And I think that that's fair. I think it's fair to say that probably most players will probably stop playing Geometry Dash long before they ever reach if we look at like the book of every single person's life and all of your skills and all of like the allocated points and attributes you have, the idea of you fully reaching your potential in any given thing in your life is very unlikely. But that's not to say, like, I think when people give up, it's before they've maxed out, man. I really do. It's the same thing with weightlifting. It's like, I think most people's... I think people give up on themselves long before they reach their potential. I think that's the simplest way to put it. I'm sorry if that was a little all over the place, but don't compare yourself to Zoink, man. Just put your feet on the straight and narrow path you're on. Trust the process, and I think you're going to surprise yourself. But a lot of us give up on ourselves before we even have the chance to surprise ourselves, man. I think we all possess far greater promise and potential than we can ever self-assess. Compare yourself to your future self? No, don't do that either. Compare yourself to your past self. Am I better than I was yesterday? And then when it gets harder, when you reach the point in this game where it's no longer about comparing yourself to you a day ago because you could have just had a good day, compare yourself to you a year ago. Am I better at this game than I was a year ago? If the answer is yes, you're fine. If the answer is no, am I better than myself 2 years ago? If the answer is yes, keep going. But don't stop beating yourself up, bro. Sorry, I've stayed on this point way too long. We need to finish the video.
Achievement list is by verifying levels that should not have been beaten. That's a pretty broad statement, so let's break this one into pillars. The first pillar of this verification is that it used to be seen as humanly impossible. A lot of people think that nerfing impossible levels to get them verified and rated removes the level's aura. While this may be true, it's better than publishing a level that was made to be past the human limit. Before anyone says anything, this is different from verifying an ordinary top 1. There's a huge difference between verifying a level that's meant to be the hardest level that can be beaten and verifying a level in its unnerved state that was once made to be impossible.
Exact. The version of me that was stuck on club step for months definitely didn't see me ever beating an extreme. Exactly. That's also why we can't look ahead to the future version of ourselves, because the future version of ourselves is a full abstraction that we have no idea of. And the future version of you is solely based on your subjective experience. Like, if you have a positive mindset, you'll be like, oh man, the future version of me is looking back and smiling because I'm the freaking top 1 player in GD. Versus if you have a bad mindset, you'll be like, the future version of me is disappointed because I gave, like, you know, like that. That's why it doesn't work. But that's why you just have to, you just never know. If you just stick to it, you could look back at yourself and be like, what the heck? Sometimes, and especially if you have it on video, that's why I'm grateful for having so much of my journey, especially as a creator on video. Sometimes when I'm trying to lie to myself about like, oh, I really haven't come that far away, I'll go back and watch one of my old videos and I'll be like, oh man, I was really bad at this game. The same thing happened when I did Super Mario 64. I watched day one of me trying to speedrun Super Mario 64, and I had concrete evidence that I had gotten better, that I was getting better, that I was progressing. Sometimes you can't appreciate the journey you've walked until you're looking back at it in hindsight. But you don't get to look back at the journey without going through it in the present. Pushing past the annoying parts. Sorry, we're so off topic.
The first issue that comes with this is something we touched upon earlier. Maybe there's one player out there who can do the impossible. Maybe there are then 2 or 3 other players who can beat the same level once the illusion that it's possible is present. For the remaining 99.9% repeating of list grinders, this is the worst case scenario. Unnaturally raising the skill ceiling is a surefire way to get some unplay-tested impossible levels on the list and leave everyone else in the dust. Worst of all is that the rest of the top playing community would have gotten to this skill level.
My alarm went off. Remind me to go live in 10 minutes.
Eventually. It would have taken several years longer, but the levels on the list would be better and the very top wouldn't be run by really just one actual player. There would undoubtedly be some new faces at the top of the stats viewer if this one player wasn't so far ahead. Who knows how many people have given up because they can't keep up with the acceleration of the skill ceiling. One concrete example is when this player swooped in and essentially stole the spotlight on an open verification. The purpose of an open verification is for anyone to be able to verify it, so the verification itself wasn't technically stolen. However, this player picked up the impossible level that someone else had been working on and beat it significantly faster than the other verifier could have dreamed of. After time, the level got rated and now sits on the demon list, tormenting anyone and everyone who attempts to go for it. The second pillar of this verification is its unplay-tested nature. Impossible levels aren't made with the intention of anyone playing them. The creator does not spend any time thinking about whether the level would be fair or fun to play. When there's one player who's good enough to plow through anything, these unplay-tested levels end up on the list. People have always been drawn to beating the levels that have the most aura. That title will never not belong to a level that was once seen as beyond the human limit. Whereas
But I think the whole point of the list, right, is like, that's the one thing where it's like, obviously I say not to compare yourself to others, but like the nature of the list is what is the human limit. And yeah, it sucks if there's a player who's like head and shoulders above the other people, but at the end of the day, that's more of an issue with the way the community sees the list, right? The community sees the list as like, these are levels that I want to be able to beat so I can stroke my own ego. And I think that's my argument. I think if the list was genuinely supposed to be representative of human limit, then some of us wouldn't get our pants tied up in a knot about like someone who's better than us at the game being able to beat a level that we can't
Any
beat.
former top 1 will be painstakingly difficult, impossible.
If it was truly just about cataloging the highest upper human limit levels that have been beaten, then why would we care?
Levels will be blatantly unfair. The number 1 player of any era may be good enough to manage.
So you admit it's a bit of a dick measuring contest.
Manage the choke points, bugs, bad transitions, and blind clicks in the hardest level, but the rest of the community is not equipped to deal with that. Over time, the level's difficulty relative to the skill ceiling will decrease, but its quality will not increase. It doesn't matter if a former top 1 is still in the top 10 or on the legacy list, its unplaytested features are just as frustrating as they were when it was verified. The real issue is that this sets the precedent that it's fine to verify unplaytested levels as long as it'll end up on the list. This starts with the top levels, but over time it slowly trickles its way down the list until list demons of all difficulties are riddled with poor playtesting. This leads me into the third and final pillar of—
Dude, genuinely, I don't care. Am I crazy? I think this is completely wrapped up in the GD player's ego of like, well, I want to be able to like easily beat list demon levels. I don't know. I don't get it.
of this notorious verification, which is
If there reaches a point where the list is so difficult that I can't beat it, it is what it is.
the devolution of gameplay. Top 1s have an unbelievable amount of influence on the future of list demons. For the longest
There are some really shitty levels to play. I agree with him. Just clunky gameplay. I mean, that's fair. Like, I get that. I don't know.
time, the hardest levels played like any other level, but harder. Back in 2017, there were even some discussions
I mean, I want to beat a list level to prove to myself I can, and also because cool levels I like. No, for sure. But
about
whatever.
whether top demons needed to start becoming longer in order to prevent the base gameplay from getting too difficult. Fast forward a few years, and now those levels are the exception rather than the rule. We went from long levels with beautiful progression to straight up challenge.
Levels can be difficult without being terrible to play. I understand that. But at the end of the day, if a player beats a level and it's harder than what's currently on the list, it is added to the list. Why fight it? Again, this comes from like, sorry. Like, we can't do both. We can't have like the hardest levels in the game also be, oh, they're the hardest levels in the game, but also they're super fun to play and also like they're awesome levels. You can't have both. That's like, I think that's unrealistic. You want the list levels to be like super awesome levels. Fair. But I think that's, you're no longer making the list one job tracking the human limit of difficulty. You're making it like, oh yeah, this is like, these are really hard levels, but also they're like awesome level. Like, no, that's like, if this was a software like task at a job, that would be like the scope is increasing. I understand the tendency, but I think I just fundamentally disagree with that.
Challenge gameplay. One player changed the meta for creating top demons overnight.
Do I agree that it would be cool if all the list demons were awesome and fun to play? Absolutely. But I don't think that's the goal of the list, in my opinion. I understand why we as players would want that to be the goal of the list, but I don't think it is.
Without this verification, we wouldn't be in the era of fixed hitboxes and 10 CPS wave spams in top demons. Despite how it sounds, Pointer Crate's downfall isn't the result of one player pushing the limits and everyone else failing to keep up. There's one more crucial part of the story. In fact, the biggest offense of the current #1 player is something that wasn't even his fault. Being the #1 player comes with great responsibility because the entire playing community is resting on your shoulders. You are supremely in charge of influencing the future direction of top level play and subsequently many easier levels of play as well. The combination of your work ethic and your skill set is the sole determinant of how this game evolves. Or is it? Reaching the top of any leaderboard is a simple yet impossible task. Your only objective is to beat everyone and everything standing in your way. In a game like Geometry Dash, this includes the hardest levels, the most unconventional gameplay, the most talented players, and in some cases, an unstoppable force. In other games, it's quite clear when this force is indeed unstoppable. You have aimbots in shooters, macros in fighting games, and world-class adaptive AI bots in Rocket League. These types of games all require that you meet face-to-face with the illegal modifications, and it's often quite obvious when someone else is playing dirty. In Geometry Dash, however, it's just you and your icon. You can't see what your main competition is doing. You can't feel the effects of their playing methods. You are largely unable to determine infractions of the game's competitive integrity by yourself. So what happens if you don't know that your opponent is truly unstoppable? Well, you push even harder. With great talent comes great power. With great power comes great responsibility. With great responsibility comes thousands of people willing to throw you under the bus and frame you for someone else's actions. This one player has stepped on countless grenades that were thrown several years ago by someone else's decision. One operational error left someone in the position to permanently alter the game's trajectory, but everyone looks down upon the main beneficiary. How much of the Demon List downfall is actually caused by the person who sits at the top? And how many of today's problems are the result of the player who was not even playing? Oh my god! My name is Tria, and that's how Space UK ruined the Demon List.
Oh, okay. The bait and switch harder than my difficulty opinions. Yeah, I definitely thought we were talking about Zoink. I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, I was removed from the community. I think especially like probably, yeah, when the Space UK stuff happened, yeah, that probably did mess up the list. Yeah, that's fair. But currently the list probably isn't messed up. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, in that era, that's fair. I was confused because we were talking about it in like the current era, but no, yeah, that's fair. All of the points, that's a clever video, man. He presents all of his points with like the modern focus, and then like he just gets a get out of jail free card of like, no, I'm talking about like when it actually was true. Fair enough, man. All right, W React, keep suggesting videos for me, y'all. I mean, obviously we had some interesting discussions about it. We had some interesting discussions. That's cool. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. Did you like that? Don't even pretend like you didn't. You made it that far in the video. Well, did you know that I stream Monday through Friday on Twitch and YouTube, and you could catch me live and get to be a part of the experience when it happens? Also, if you don't care about that, or otherwise you want to see more of the video that you just watched, link in the description to watch the full VOD. Do that, please. I have a black eye because I play basketball sometimes. Bye.